Well, hopefully my fan isn't coming across too loud. Like I say, it's absolutely scorching here today. And of course, when you've got a sort of a studio set up like this, it only can make it warm. So hopefully, um, hopefully the fan is not causing too much of a noise issue. But it's a bit warm today. So the Conservative leadership contest is well and truly underway today. With expecting Liz Truss today at some point to announce. But we are also expecting possibly Priti Patel also to throw her hat in the ring today as well. And two big points, of course, certainly to look out in this coming week. Certainly today, the 1922 committee are meeting to decide to raise the threshold of the initial backing number of Tory MPs that they need to order to be able to take part in this contest. They're raising it from it's currently at 18. They're raising it to 20 apparently. So that is going to be quite interesting because it will knock some of these, well, what the Conservatives themselves have dubbed the no-hopers out of the competition quite early. You also have the big milestone on Thursday. That is the deadline for when these Conservatives, or at least these candidates at the moment, need to have all their stuff prepared and getting ready to go. We'll also hear today the full timetable of when all these other big milestones are due to take place. And trust me, once we know who's in the running for sure, we've already heard rumors of digital dossiers that have huge amounts of dirt and scandals and sleaze that are being slung around currently among the Conservative MPs, and some very, very fiery WhatsApp chats apparently going on. So that will be very interesting if any of those happen to get leaked. But make no mistake, as what we've been saying for quite a while, the Conservative Party and this leadership contest is going to end up tearing itself apart. But today we go once again to Conservative Home, because one of the things that all these Conservatives are making, they are making a lot of promises to, first of all, reduce the size of the state, but also to cut taxes, but also maintain a good level of service. And obviously you can see the contradiction right there. And I've said that during this contest, we will be looking at Conservative Home because Conservative Home constantly reaches out to sort of the Tory membership. A lot of the popularity polls, very often that we've gone over from the past of how popular certain Conservative politicians do come from Conservative Home. It is quite an influential website on the so in the non-Conservative parliamentary website as well as the parliamentary website. So it is certainly worth paying attention to, where they put out a piece today which basically just goes, yeah, don't believe what all these candidates are going to tell you. That's a very, very interesting indeed. So let's go over to this piece in Conservative Home and see what they're saying about these potential candidates so far. So, as I said, this comes from Conservative Home, the title of The Tory Leadership Election. Beware of candidates who tell you what you want to hear. So that is, to me, a direct dig at beware the populists. Just quite interesting because the Conservative Party has taken a lean towards this populist narrative in the past. So we may be seeing an attempt to maybe ditch that part of the party. But even then, as we've said before, there are parties within the party and they all want different things, and they're going to end up tearing each other to pieces over these ideological differences. And certainly once we get, shall we say, a proper list of who's who in the candidate order and running, certainly going to be very, very interesting. So here we go. On the debt side, Britain is an aging country. Like other Western democracies, families that age risk dying out. And ours has also been sustained by immigration on a scale previously unknown, which brings its own challenges. Interestingly enough there. yeah, we've got a really bad aging population, so we need to bring in immigrants. But oh no, immigrations are bad, and that brings its own challenges. Not the first time he's going to be doing this in the article, so watch out for those. Ownership of capital divides up by age, with young people on the wrong side of the line and place, since prosperity is spread unevenly in Britain, at least compared to our European neighbours. Interesting that they would make that admission. Meanwhile, there is a risk that one part of the country, Scotland, may leave altogether. And this is quite an interesting admission. Provincial discontent with these disparities helped to make the Brexit vote possible. But it isn't clear what our government wants to make of leaving the EU, or how it will, quote, build back better after COVID. In the noble if pandemic drive to level up. So that's a very interesting admission that, yeah, all this discontent that very much was caused by the Conservative Party because of their not only just austerity, but doubling down on austerity. That's a very interesting admission that their policies, well, it's not an admission that it's their policies, but admission that there were disparities that helped to drive the Brexit vote. So that's a very interesting weakness from a Conservative website. Anyway, it continues. And to the traditional list of British weaknesses, such as low productivity, inventing stuff here that gets developed elsewhere, and neglected skills. One can add to the record of to a record tax burden, public services that sometimes aren't as good as we pretend, the NHS, and they work at all, the passport offices. Here's the thing: we know the NHS works. It needs the money to be able to function and run properly, and that's what it's been very much deprived of for the past couple of years. Meanwhile, he continues, parts of the displaced remain ascendancy have come to terms with leaving the EU, but parts have not. I would argue what that is, because the Remain campaign is still very much there, and people sort of haven't given in on rejoining. That's certainly come to true. And this is interesting. Once again, counts parts of the civil service, the quote legal academy, bigger businesses, and the this I've never heard this term before. The quanocracy. Never heard that term before. Higher education and the state broadcasting the latter. Wait, are you saying the BBC hasn't come? Is pro-Remain? The BBC is incredibly neutral, and it sort of values its neutrality. Now, you can make cases for and against whether it is or not, but it's bizarre that you would try and sort of make that, but there you go. But again, the Remain campaign isn't really going anywhere, because very, very quickly it is going to show just how bad, in fact, it's already showing just how bad it is damaging us economically to this. And the more we want to, quote, diverge, the harder it becomes for us to trade with our closest trading partners. That was pretty much there since day one. What we've been saying for years is, look, it's your guys' job. You are the Brexiteers. You are the guys who say leave was a good idea. So you're the ones who have got to show that Brexit works. It's not up to us to show that it works or not. It's your guys' idea, and if it fails, it's on you, not us. Again, they're also part of the big blame game that they like to play, of course. Brexit's not our fault, it's the Remainers. Now to the credit side. We have culture skirmishes rather than wars, at least compared to America so far. The dividing lines on abortion are less sharp, and we have no equivalent to Roe v. Wade. Again, very, very worrying that they're making this, because as I've said before, guys, we have to beware about that. That they're coming over here next for abortion. Trust me, you can already see the writing is literally on Conservative home. Anyway, he continues. A deposed Boris Johnson has not yet done a Trump and urged his fans to march on Parliament. And if we are less divided than the United States, we are also more rooted than our European neighbours. France, Spain, Italy, and even Germany with the ADF all have seen establishment political forces under pressure or going bust over the past 15 years or so. Well, we might see that in the Conservatives in the next election. By contrast, the political parties that sit in the Commons are, if represented, in very different numbers, much the same as at the end of the Thatcher era. It's first past the post that does it. Again, trying to sort of say, oh no, look, first past the post has delivered a far more tame political system. Just don't ignore the chaos that has happened since 2016. One man's force for inertia is another man's force for stability. Again, already attacking the PR argument there. If our skills sector is weak, our university one is strong, at the top end anyway, with our four main British ones in the world's top 10. There is, again, an upside to the dominance of London, that the provincial England flicked a V sign at during the EU referendum in the City of London, again, the financial services. And again, he's already talked about how the disparity between regions is a bad thing. And yet that's also a good thing, right? Then take into account the relative flexibility of our labour market. Again, it's pretty much predominantly very much 0 hours that dominates the labour market, which isn't very good for workers, as we have seen throughout the years. We've talked about that before in this channel. The vaccine success story. Again, you can cling to that if you really want to, but it's not really true when you start to break that story down. The can-do armed forces, the services of the monarch, the vibrancy of much of the arts, even though Boris and the Conservatives are defunding the arts in a massive way, and the Olympic success story. And again, also because they are defunding all these programs, certainly for PE and extracurricular stuff like that, that is not going to be as strong as it was, as it certainly is now in the future. Such is the country that the new Conservative leader can expect to govern in less than 2 months' time. Unlike Boris Johnson, this new Prime Minister will not have won an election. Like him, he or she can't reasonably expect to solve much of these challenges in only 2 years or so. And put it this way, or even actually do anything much in 2 years or so, because some of these problems are big, and you need big solutions to solve these big problems. And there are none of these big problems. The solution of the Conservatives is just to go to that ideology and just go, right, we're going to cut taxes. Right, we're going to go back to a small state. But people will still want high public services. So we're going to insist on high public services. Again, all this stuff doesn't matter because it's inconsistent with the reality of this country. And the Conservatives are not facing up to the reality of the problems that are facing this country. So, but the new leader, he says, will continue to rise to three in particular. The first, the cost of living crisis. The new government will need an economic policy, which, frankly, this one has simply not had. That's a good admission. And in fact, it's a very good thing to say that they were not good economic policies, but industrial policies or any stuff to actually help build the economy. You've got to actually have a plan for that stuff. And there was no plan. And still, current Tories have no plan for this. The second, holding our precious union together. The Prime Minister must have a workable plan to keep Nicola Sturgeon in her box. Finally, there is a lack of housing in general and owned homes in particular for young people and its consequences. Again, we have had in, I think, just as many years of conservative, in fact, we've had more housing ministers. No, in fact, the proper scary statistic is that no housing minister has lasted longer than 6 months. So, of course, there is a housing crisis because they do not they do not stick around long enough, because they keep on changing them out. Because whenever they try to solve problems with this housing crisis, very often the Conservatives balk at this idea, because the solution is to build more houses. The problem is a lot of Conservatives do not want more houses built in the areas that need more houses being built, which is, again, it's a complete catch-22 situation for them. You saw that during, I think it was the Cheshire and Amersham by-election, where it was put down to the changes in the rules of planning that lost them that by-election. And again, that was a solution to the housing crisis. We'll change the planning laws so we can build more houses. Oh no, we don't like that here in Cheshire and Amersham. So, Anyway, he continues. Housing shortages mean that children later, if at all, the average age at which people marry is now in the late 30s. Labour immobility, and also lower productivity and wages. Not all new housing can be shifted into the Midlands and North, which is where it needs to be. Okay. Anyway, continues, which takes us to the leadership election itself. During the last one in 2019, I went to the big hustings in Kent. So did journalists from publications of all political colours and more. One from the decidedly un-blue Financial Times, and then another from the even less so Observer, told me how impressed they were with the often maligned at time Conservatives activists present, and by the quality and tone of their questions, pointed but polite. As a member myself, I wasn't all surprised, and I believed that whenever one's view of the choices that they made, there was logic to their decision. Brexit should be delivered, they delivered. Boris Johnson was most likely to deliver it, ergo, vote for Boris Johnson. My hope that this time around is that Tory activists approach the contest in the same spirit. Here's the thing. Brexit has been done. The idea that Brexit can continue to be this ever growing political capital for the Conservative Party is not true. Brexit is only going to diminish as political capital, and the further we get away from the official date, the worse it becomes. Remember, the Conservatives are still not publishing a official document into the economic impacts of Boris Johnson's own Brexit deal. Of course, where they were, the same spirit, mindful responsibility. They would have to get it right. The Conservative MPs do this week at the parliamentary stage of the election. Frankly, it could all go either way. On one hand, if presented, to pick a topical example, with the proposal for tax cuts, members should ask some very probing questions. Are these tax cuts, is it right to cut taxes? How does the candidate propose to cut them? Does he believe that they will pay for themselves through higher growth or more borrowing? If not, he has to advance a broader framework for them all. If so, is it durable? And again, there was an economist yesterday, I think interviewed by Channel 4, tax cuts in the short term may help, but in the long term, they are not sustainable. The current, tax cuts that Boris Johnson wants to deliver, we need even higher taxes to pay for a lot more stuff. And of course, this gets us into a very, bad economic situation. Like I say, I'm not an economist, but every economist is going around saying, yeah, bad times are ahead. And I think this isn't just going to be a one-off bump. I think we are looking at a years-long problem. And a lot of this is going to be caused by Brexit as well, and exacerbated by Brexit. So, and finally, Will any pros to tax cuts actually really happen at all if the candidate wins the contest? After all, Boris Johnson promised the income tax cut for top earners during the 2019 election. We await them still. Or the contest might go the other way and become a performative Tory version of Just a Minute, in which candidates compete for the most orgasm-inducing sound bites in the least possible time. The cut the income tax, scrap Northern Ireland Protocol, abolish net zero, promote Lord Frost, the EHC bar ban, woke sack the judges, bomb the EU. Bing, thank you, done. Ferdinand, or was it Fossey? You win a standing ovation and pass into Downing Street. I think it's very much going to be that. Trust me. For clarity, there's nothing wrong in wanting tax cuts, marching in step with spending cuts, or believing that net zero target is impractical. Very interesting for the fact that he is disagreeing with, shall we say, what was done in the Times, because there was a big group of Green Conservatives wrote a big piece in the Times, basically imploring the candidates not to ditch net zero because it was a vote winner, saying how much like the environmentalism is becoming more and more of a vote winner and a factor at elections. Is fact they polled it themselves in Conservatives. The environment is second to the NHS, so that could be very, very interesting consequences if they do go and ditch net zero. Anyway, he continues. All thinking that Lord Frost should be promoted, he shouldn't, or the protocol rewritten from top to bottom. Again, you cannot rewrite the protocol by yourselves. It is just not doable. Again, all this stuff we could go on and talk about at length. just that one thing, and just pick about it and just do a video at length talking about the problems that this guy is sort of bringing up and the Tories are not solving, that they've had years to solve and not solved them. Nevertheless, one should always be suspicious of people who tell you what you want to hear. Obviously, there's an easier to rub along with people who tell you what you don't want to hear. But the man who tells you you can't have what you want, and the man who says that you can, but only if you vote for him, and after you've done so, says that he's terribly sorry the circumstances have changed, or that he's now a prisoner of them. And with all due respect to the bloke still in number 10, we've had a run of our party leader telling us what we want to hear, but not all of it has happened. If ministers haven't delivered what they promised now already, it might be worth asking them why not. If the answer is simply to, quote, blame Boris Johnson, ask yourself, how sustainable is that, given is it to gain office by trashing his legacy and perhaps theirs? Better, sharper questions than esoteric cheers as the candidate tears up the Northern Ireland Protocol on stage. The louder cheers yet when the second one eats it. And of course, the louder cheers still when the third one sets fire to it, plus himself and the other candidates, and perhaps you too. So already what that is a warning to Conservative members not to give in to populism. And bear in mind, as we've said before, the UKIP infiltration has brought populism to the Conservative Party in a big way. This leadership contest is going to go exactly what he said at the end. It is going to be a massive performance. One person will tear it up on stage, another one will eat it, and another one will set fire to it, and then probably himself. The trying to get rid of the Northern Ireland Protocol is just a complete non-starter. But they are doing it because it's popular. Every single candidate is giving into Tory populism. They are going full on board. Yeah, we're going to cut tax. Yeah, we're going to reduce the size of the state. Yeah, we're going to tear up the Northern Ireland Protocol. But we're also going to deliver really high standard of services. Well, oh yeah, and we're also going to level up as well, while not giving money to leveling up. We said it just a couple of days ago when we went over this. Boris Johnson has left a legacy of unanswered questions over what the Tory party actually is. And these questions from all these different groups are on either side of it in the Tory party. You've got, are we a big state or are we a small state? Are we high tax or are we low tax? How do we level up? You know, there's a ton of more questions that Boris Johnson, in his time as PM, did not answer, did not solve, or did not actually provide any serious solutions to solving any of these problems that the Conservative government has been facing for years. And in fact, many of them have come as a direct consequence of Tory policies for over the past 12 years. So that's my again, it's interesting though that this is a plea to Conservative members: do not give in to populism. But my response to sort of this guy who wrote this article: the Conservative Party gave in to populism the very day they voted in Boris Johnson. And the problem is, every single other Conservative MP that is currently running, probably in this leadership contest, is themselves giving in to populism. And it is going to be a colossal mess. And quite frankly, I'm going to love watching every single minute of this. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below, there's links to my Patreon page and a donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.